Hi, Chris.
Hi, Enya. How are you today?
I'm very happy and excited to record this new episode, actually. How about you?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. Who are we talking about today?
So today we're covering one of the oldest cold cases of New Zealand, the abduction, rape and murder of Olive Walker, a Maori teenager that was murdered on 1970, on the 15th of May of 1970.
Yeah.
So next month is going to be 51 years since their crime. And mysteriously, even though there is a load of physical evidence in the crime scene, the suspect, the perpetrator or perpetrators were never found.
Indeed. Now, this crime took place up in the town of Rotorua.
Yeah.
North
Island
of New Zealand. And
a place particularly popular as a touristic spot.
Yes.
Nowadays and 15 years ago.
Yes. At the time, there was a lot of logging industry as well as agriculture, but a lot of people in the area were involved in the logging industry, and as you will see, that actually ties in quite substantially to a piece of the evidence involved.
In the crime.
Mm-hmm.
So, Olivia Walker was born the 4th of May of 1952. She was part of a big Maori family. Her mother was Julia Walker and her father was Harry Tepo Walker. Mm-hmm. Although, according to one of my sources, the book By a Person or Person Unknown, Walker wasn't originally their surname. The original surname of them was Waka, but it was anglicized by Olive's grandparent, perhaps expecting it to be a benefit for the family to live in a colonized country.
A white man's world. Yep.
Exactly. And according to the same book, neither the parent of Olive or cousins and aunts were happy about that. They were actually very proud of being an almost pure blood Maori family. And Harry Walker, the father of Olive, actually fought in the Second World War in the 28th Maori Battalion.
Yep, which was made up of volunteers and fought on the front lines in southern Europe during World War II.
And he survived the Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy, so he was a war veteran.
Yep.
Olive was barely 18 years old. Her birthday was just 10 days before the night
of her murder. Yeah.
Of her murder. So it's very odd because there is a lot of physical evidence, but at the same time it was kind of hard to track the sources. So we used mainly the New Zealand Herald, the Rotorua Daily Post, but there's a lot of information that keeps being repeated in those news. And then we used a book of the 1980s decade by a person or persons unknown by the Kiwi author George Joseph, a lawyer and journalist, and an episode on a series of psychic involving. How can I say it?
It's one of the psychics who talk to deceased persons or receive prompts from beyond the veil to gain new information and communicate with family members and loved ones, and perhaps point out who may have
committed the crime. So this episode of Sensing Murder, which is the name of the series, was aired on 2006. Did I say air? Okay.
Aired,
okay. In 2006.
Yeah.
We could only find first-person testimonies of their families, and also the many different detectives that were involved in investigation through these years. We don't really believe in psychics.
No, especially
part.
Not for gathering of evidence, but
Factual evidence.
But one of those things, it did actually drum up a bit more interest and maybe jog some people's memories as much as anything, and did point out did bring to light some interesting key pieces of outcomes, and maybe drew a few lines through to things that weren't connected before, and apparently did actually.
It actually caused the public to be interested in the murder of Olivia once again. So perhaps that was the most important.
And it did actually result in quite a bit of feedback from the public to the New Zealand police, which is a good thing.
But first, let's go back to the night of the crime. So Olive had arranged with one of her older sisters, Mary Dillon, that she would go to babysit her nephews and nieces.
That's right.
It's said by all the people that knew Olive that she was a particularly calm and gentle girl, and very also extremely shy. So according to her sister Mary in the Sensing Murder series, she was the only one that could handle her little children.
Mary had said that Olive tended to keep to herself, being quite shy, although she did occasionally go out on weekends to socialise at the police disco.
The police disco.
Yep.
I think that was such a weird thing to do, like police running clubs.
I think it's just a safe place for young people to get together and socialise, rather than, hanging out on the street, but, hanging out, drinking, getting, smoking, getting into trouble. It's just a safe place. Kids could get together and socialise, have fun, and it was just a safe place. I used to have them back in the country in rural Western Australia, the blue light discos.
They had that in Australia.
They had them in Australia as well. So there you go. But it was just a fun social thing for local kids in rural communities.
But it's actually said that Mary would rather just sit in a corner quietly and just wave and smile at the people that were dancing and enjoying themselves. I mean, it seems like she would enjoy herself doing that by keeping apart. So this is what we mean when we say that she was particularly shy. So Olive was living with her parents. She had been going to secondary school until she was 14, and she had been working doing odd jobs for a couple of years. The parents would say that she would take particular pride in keeping their house and their garden very tidy and clean, and that she would often offer to clean other people's garden just for the hell of it, and of course being a babysitter. So their house was on Leslie Street.
And she was set to walk to her sister Mary's place, which was on Malfroy Street.
So that was when I look at a map of Rotorua, it's like quite a big distance. It's almost 20 blocks. So originally, what Olive dad would say is that she left her house at 6:45 p.m. She was actually she was meant to catch the bus, but she was seen by a witness shortly after 7 p.m. walking into the Rotorua city center. Actually, one of these witnesses that saw her was a person that was on the bus. So that's why it says in many of the sources that she actually lost the bus. So at 7:15 p.m. she was seen by some of her high school classmates in the city center of Rotorua in the front of the Odeon Theatre. And about 9 p.m. afterwards, an eyewitness would say that She was seen on the main street of Rotorua. At approximately 11:50, the police were called by a group of teenagers that found an apparently lifeless body in a lay-by that it's...
About 5 kilometers south of Rotorua?
Yeah, exactly. Just by the Baipa mill. The group of teenagers were 4 young people in a car driven by a guy called Trevor Donald Frew, who earlier in that evening had been attended to the cinema. And this lay-by was basically an open space with some picnic tables where young adolescents would go to intimate in the dark.
And just hang out, maybe have a few beers, hang out, get up to some trouble.
And they actually did get in some trouble.
Yes.
So this is curious because when this group of boys, the one that was driven by Trevor Donald Frew, when they got into the lay-by, it was at there was another car there with a teenage couple, a boy called Bennett and his girlfriend that had been spending some time in the lay-by already. So when Donald Frew and his people got into the lay-by, this other boy, Bennett, quickly turned around and left with his car in the place. And it's when Donald Drew gets out of the car is when they saw the body of who the police didn't know at that time, but we now know was Olivia Walker.
Yeah.
She was fully dressed and she had been dragged for a couple of meters until being left near a picnic table. She had been struck in the head several times with an instrument like a hammer or a tire
iron. Something with protrusions on it.
Exactly. And her skull was actually fractured in 7 pieces. It was later on discovered that even though she was fully clothed, she had been sexually abused because there was found semen on her underwear and her body. The body of Olivia didn't have any sort of ID.
Yeah.
So initially when the police gets there almost before midnight and they take it, they didn't knew about her identity. It wasn't until the next morning that Mary Dillon, her sister, the sister that was waiting for Olivia to get home and babysit her nieces, that she heard in the news that the body of a young woman, a Maori woman, was found. And she says that initially she wasn't worried about Olivia. I mean, she went to bed expecting Olive to just get into the house because it seems like that's how safe they felt in the community. But it was just at the next morning when she called their parents that she discovered that not only Olivia didn't go to her house, but she wasn't even at her house. She says in the Sensing Murder series that perhaps she thought that maybe Olivia had encountered some acquaintances and maybe joined them, even though she didn't have many friends. But anyhow, she was the first one to contact the police and actually to identify the remains of Olive.
I mean, it's unfortunate that it was one of those circumstances where someone was expected somewhere and there was there was a legitimate miscommunication between both locations that she wasn't expected anywhere, so she was assumed to be at
Well, she was suspected to be at Mary's house, actually, but she wouldn't be surprised if she had changed her mind. That's what she said, that she just thought
sometimes.
She changed
her
mind.
So she wasn't, she wasn't missing.
I mean, it was 15 years ago. I guess that people didn't have the same sense of impending danger as we might have now.